Everyone you know is either on it, hiding it, or lying about it. Not maybe, not some of them. All of them are somewhere in that triangle. And the one who looks the most indifferent is probably the one who Googled it at 1 a.m. last Tuesday with the screen brightness turned all the way down. Because that is what Ozempic has done to an entire generation of people who spent years being told that weight was a willpower problem. It handed them a needle and a result, and now nobody knows what to think, what to say, or whether to admit that they want it too. You felt something the first time you heard it mentioned, not curiosity, something sharper than that. Something that sat in your chest for a second before you dressed it up as skepticism or judgment or concern. That feeling had a name you didn't say out loud, and this conversation is for the version of you that hasn't said it yet. This is not a pharmaceutical advertisement. This is not a moral panic dressed up as health advice. This is the complete, unfiltered, scientifically grounded truth about what this drug does, what it doesn't do, what the trials found that nobody put in the headline, and what is quietly happening inside the bodies of millions of people who thought they had finally found the answer. And one piece of this story, something buried in the follow-up data that the before and after industry has no financial interest in discussing, it was going to hit you somewhere the marketing never reached. Stay here. Because 60 seconds from now, this conversation changes direction in a way you will not see coming, and it is the direction that matters most. Let's start with what nobody wants to say first. Ozempic works. Dramatically, undeniably. In ways that decades of diet culture told you were only possible through suffering and discipline and an almost religious relationship with a calorie deficit. Semaglutide, the compound inside the injection, mimics a hormone called GLP-1 that your body naturally produces after eating. It tells your pancreas to regulate insulin. It slows your stomach down. And most powerfully, most life-changingly, it walks directly into the reward and appetite centers of your brain and turns down the volume on something that millions of people describe as the most exhausting feature of their entire existence: the food noise. The constant, relentless background hum of hunger and craving that never fully quiets no matter how much you eat, how much you exercise, or how hard you try. For people who have lived with that noise their entire lives, Ozempic doesn't just reduce appetite. It produces something close to silence, and for the first time, they understand that the struggle was never a character flaw. It was a chemical reality. That realization alone changes people. The clinical trials are not subtle about the results. Participants lost an average of 15% of their body weight. Some lost dramatically more. For people whose excess weight was directly threatening their heart, their joints, their metabolic function, their lifespan, this is not a cosmetic outcome. This is medicine doing exactly what medicine is supposed to do. The data is real. The results are real. The people crying in their doctor's offices because something finally worked after decades of being failed by every other intervention, they are real. And now the part that needs to be just as real. The side effects are not fine print. They are the experience of a significant portion of every person who starts this drug. Nausea that doesn't just inconvenience you, nausea that reorganizes your day. Vomiting, gastrointestinal disruption, severe enough that clinical trials had meaningful dropout rates not because the drug failed, but because the body rebelled against it. Pancreatitis, acute serious inflammation of the pancreas, has been documented in users. The drug carries a black box warning for a specific type of thyroid tumor observed in animal studies, which is why it is contraindicated in anyone with a personal or family history of certain thyroid cancers. These are not rumors manufactured by people who want you to stay overweight. These are in the prescribing information. These are what informed consent actually looks like. And you deserve to hold both truths at once: the remarkable efficacy and the non-trivial risk, without one being used to cancel the other out. But here's the truth that lands differently than all of it. Here's the one that the transformation photos cannot show you. When people stop taking Ozempic, the weight comes back. Not slowly, not partially, not in the manageable, gradual way that you could work with and adjust to. In follow-up studies conducted after trial, participants discontinued the medication. The majority regained most of their lost weight within 12 months. Some regained nearly all of it. And this is not weakness. This is not failure. This is your body executing a biological program it never stopped running, a defense of a weight set point that semaglutide suppressed but never reset, a hunger signal that the drug silenced but never rewired, a metabolic adaptation that was fighting your weight loss the entire time you thought you were winning. The moment the drug leaves your system, the system that was always underneath it reasserts itself, older, more entrenched. and now carrying the psychological wreckage of having lost and lost again in a cycle that research shows becomes progressively more damaging with each repetition. This is the conversation that the billion-dollar industry built around this drug is not having with you, because it ends with a question nobody profits from asking: what happens after? What happens after when the prescription ends because you can no longer afford $300 a month for a medication not covered by your insurance? What happens after when the shortage means your pharmacy can't fill it? What happens after when your body, now dependent on a pharmaceutical signal to feel full, has to relearn how to regulate appetite from a baseline that was already compromised? What happens after when the weight returns and you have to live inside the specific devastation of a person who did everything right and still ended up back at the beginning? There's also something corroding at the cultural level that no clinical trial is measuring. The overnight normalization of pharmaceutical weight loss is rewriting something dangerous into the collective story about bodies. The transformation is available, that it is fast, that it is chemical, and that if you don't have access to it, the gap between you and the people who do is no longer just financial. It is now visible. It lives in other people's bodies. And body image research is unambiguous about what happens to people's mental health. When weight loss is reframed as easy and accessible for others, the self-perception damage is severe, measurable, and lasting. This drug is not a villain. It is not a miracle. It is a powerful, legitimate, genuinely life-changing tool for specific people in specific medical circumstances, and it is simultaneously being consumed by a culture that was never given the complete story, by people making permanent biological decisions based on temporary social trends, by a system that profits from your hope more than it invests in your outcome. You came here for the truth. That is what this was. So leave your answer in the comments right now and be honest with yourself when you do. If cost, access, and side effects were completely off the table and nobody in your life would ever know, would you take it? Because your answer and the reason behind it reveals something about your relationship with your own body that is worth more than any drug on the market.